Hi, my name is Rod Cleef, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Cleef, and I'm thrilled that you're here. And I'm really looking forward to today's interview. It's with a gentleman named Maurice, and this is a very interesting guy. There's very little he hasn't done. He lives both in the States here, but also has a presence in the Mediterranean and Cyprus and thereabouts. And he's a philanthropist. He's killed it in real estate, he's got 1,200 doors now. He's done $100 million worth of real estate and a bunch of other things. Comes from a humble background, a public service background. And I'm not going to steal his thunder because I want to hear the story myself. Well, welcome to the show, brother. I'm really glad to have you here.
Rod, I'm thrilled, man. I've been an admirer of yours for a while, and the real estate work, but more so what you're doing to give back, my man. So I appreciate it.
No, thank you, buddy. And guys, when I started this interview with Maurice, I was like, how can I add value to you? But his bio basically said his goal is just to motivate and let folks know how he did it. And I just so admire that philosophy and that mindset, which is the reason he's a huge success. I mean, you've heard me say it on the show, power moves to those who serve. So, definitely that's the case here. So Maurice, tell us, go back and tell us. I know you were in the military, but please take us back and give us a little bit of your trajectory and your bio and bring us current, and take your time with it because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, brother, I will. And I'll baseline it with where I am now. Okay. So I'm 46. I retired from the W-2 life this year, being a corporate exec for 25 years, being a cop for 15. And 2 years ago, 22 years military, lieutenant colonel and federal agent, I retired. Born in New York, raised in Boston, now in the DC area and the Mediterranean. And my family's an immigrant family from Haiti. So my brother and I are first generation Haitian in this country. I always say my dad gave me education and then he told me to go out and figure it out yourself. And I did. The story is I got down to University of Virginia, ROTC scholarship, played football, did mechanical engineering. When I graduated, fortunately, the military said, look, man, there's too many officers coming out nationwide. You can go guard reserve if you want. And I took it because my corporate firm, Anderson Consulting at the time, but now known as Accenture, who I worked for 25 years, they offered me 42 grand and the military was 24 grand for a second lieutenant. So that was an easy decision. But as soon as I got to corporate life, and based on the fact that when I was 15 years old, my father started me traveling internationally, and I had a lot of experiences that I couldn't explain as an inner city knucklehead. I knew that I wanted more than just sitting behind the corporate desk my entire life. And I had awareness of it, Rod. I think that's one of the biggest things. Awareness popped up at 21 or 22, probably from some divine intervention. I started researching real estate and personal finance. I found the phrase passive income when I was 22. I went to the library, man. There was no Google. There was no Yahoo yet. This is back in 98, 99. Yahoo was just starting. And I just started investing in real estate. And it brought me, fast forward to 2014, after 13 years of single family investing, got to 35 single family homes, paid off 18 of them, had about 160 grand of cash flow, maybe 170 cash flow coming in, more than I was making at work. But that's when you start to realize life is not about money, it's about challenges and experiences. So I sought out the next challenge, which was multifamily, and everything exploded. But I want to caveat that all by saying, look, it was always about freedom for me. It was never, there was never I want to be a decamillionaire or a centimillionaire or something like that. It was, how can I give myself options later in life? And I have created quite a few of them at this point.
Very nice. Very nice. So let me ask you this: as Accenture, were you in accounting, or what was your core?
Yeah, so IT consulting.
IT consulting.
IT and management consulting. Yeah, so implementation of large scale IT systems in the federal government or strategy planning, all that type of stuff.
No, okay, very interesting. So would you define yourself kind of as an engineer in a way, in a fashion?
By education, I'm a
Yeah.
mechanical engineer, but in
Okay.
professional
Okay.
life, I was just a problem solver. I was
Okay.
just really, really good at it. And you just start to realize all you do, work is about solving people's problems. It's the same thing in real estate, right?
I was just going to go there. I was just going to go
Oh, it
there.
is.
At my live events, I tell people put on your problem solver hat because most deals have some hair of some sort,
Okay.
and the most successful people in this business are the ones that are able to see a problem and deal with it. And that
Right.
problem can be any number of things with the way assets being managed or it's financed or a number of things that you have to deal with to take a deal down or to turn a deal around. So
Right.
love it. So I was going to ask you that question. Did that translate over into the real estate? You beat me to it. So
All of it did.
yeah. So you talked about some awareness. You used the word awareness. And one of the questions I like to ask is, have you had any aha moments, any epiphanies? Can we drill down on that a little bit? So,
Yeah,
and maybe talk about one or two of those moments. Obviously, one was when you got into real estate initially, passive income. Can you maybe elaborate on that? And maybe if you had one when you decided to go larger or whatever. I don't want
That's okay.
pre-frame.
Three come to mind right away.
Okay.
Like as soon as you were saying that, three popped up in my head. The first one, as I alluded to, when I was 15 years old, my father started me traveling internationally.
Yeah, that's
I traveled. I went with an exchange student to France who had stayed at my house the previous summer, and his dad drove me around his dad drove us around the country of France in an old Range Rover for 30 days. Rod, this is me being, from inner city Boston kid.
Right.
I had never experienced anything outside of Boston.
Right.
So I started to see that the world was a lot bigger than where I was from.
If I could interrupt you for 1 second,
Yeah.
I just want to say, guys, I want to hammer this home to you. If you have children and you have the ability to allow them to experience other countries is the best thing you can do. I mean, I was blessed. My dad worked for Continental Airlines back when I was young, and we could fly around the world on TWA, I remember, for $88. So I raised $88 with my newspaper route, and we ended up going to Paris and Rome and Frankfurt and Tel Aviv and London. And it was the most incredible experience to help my IQ. Okay. I will tell you, I think it builds your IQ. Do you agree, Maurice?
Absolutely. I have empathy.
Yeah.
I have empathy.
Yeah. Empathy as well, of course, because you see how the other side lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so just want to hammer that piece home. So, if you have an opportunity, those of you listening and you have children and you can take them out of the country, or at the very least, take them around this country or up to Canada or Mexico or whatever, just see other things. It's so impactful on their development. Anyway, please continue.
100%. And that's what I was going to say. I've been to 100 countries over 300 times. My
Wow.
kids have been to 10 countries. My 8-year-old has been to 9 countries already.
Wow.
He's a different kid. So that was definitely a catalyst. The other catalyst was finding passive income and understanding that you could divorce your ability to make money from physically having to be somewhere.
Time for money, exchanging time for money. Yeah.
And Rod, our formal education system doesn't take the time or doesn't have the ability to teach us those types of values like time for money or that debt makes money, that debt isn't taxed, all those things. Mm-hmm. It pushed me to self-educate when I figured out something. And it was just because the first place I bought to live in appreciated in 2003 at the beginning of the boom and made 30 grand in 4 months. Mm-hmm. And that was like, wait a minute, I just made somebody's salary, and it clicked, right? And then the third component I would say is
third epiphany.
Yep. When I did get up to 2016 or 17, I realized that everything that I had done in single family was a slow grind. I'm glad that I did it. The systematic paying off of different places over a decade. But I met my 4 current business partners late 2019. And since then, we've closed on 21 apartment complexes. We did 100 million in 2021. We'll do just about that based on our goals this year. We'll do it again this year. But I moved way faster because I had smarter people around me with like ideals. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The speed and the economies of scale that came with partnering with like-minded people was no joke. And that's why I'm in a position that I am today.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I'll tell you, I can parallel that to our Warrior program. I have a coaching program, and I've been teaching for 4 years. And my students have over 50,000 doors that they own now. In fact, it's probably well over. I can't keep track of it anymore. They're averaging a couple thousand a month now, and it's because they align. They find, this business, as you know, Maurice, is a team sport, and you identified that right out of the gate. You aligned with some people. I'm sure that you each play to your strengths, and that's when you're playing to your strengths and you're working inside of what you love, you're passionate about it, you have the ability to influence people. And if everybody's playing in their wheelhouse to their strengths, success is a foregone conclusion. So You agree with me?
Absolutely. And don't be selfish. And you know what the military gave me? I was definitely a leader in my right, being a federal agent running field offices across the world. But when I got to doing the Quattro Capital stuff, I didn't necessarily want to be the leader in front. My partner, Kim, is kind of our leader. I am a very, very good follower when I need to be. There are times for you to be out in front and times for you to sit back and play to your strengths. My strengths is people related. I was a street cop. I was a federal agent. I was in corporate. I was in the military. I grew up from nothing. So I can speak to white collar, blue collar, no collar. So wouldn't it make sense for me to be on the investor relations side and help people determine their own path to financial freedom? So that's where I spend probably 70% of my time now, is with people rather than me going to find the actual real estate.
Got it. You've wanted freedom.
Yeah.
And in your bio, you defined it as financial freedom, time freedom, geographic freedom, freedom of purpose, and freedom in your relationships. Now, you've got kids, you're and I guess maybe you don't just mean your intimate relationship, you're meaning any relationship. But you also listed yourself as a philanthropist. Can we speak about that for a minute? How do you give back? What do you do to make the world a better place, other than like adding value on a podcast like this? But what else do you do?
Yeah. So I'm a man of service. So it definitely, that muscle, if you will, comes from serving in the military and then becoming a street cop. And that was at the same time I was a corporate exec. I decided to do both jobs full time just because I wanted to give back to local community in a meaningful way. But in the philanthropy side today, it's taking a very large chunk of my own personal revenue and doing things like, I just got back from Lebanon 2 weeks ago. I work with local community leaders there, find people to impact, but people that I can move the needle today. So someone who doesn't have any means and needed a hip replacement, we paid for the entire thing.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah. We found a woman she's incredible. I'm a French speaker, so it's easy for me to get along over there.
Right.
She has a pancreatic cancerous tumor that's 4 centimeters. She's getting chemo to get it down to 2. And then we paid for the removal of it.
Wow.
And then some other thing. So like some people give through organizations, and I think that that's wonderful as well. In my selfish nature, I want to actually feel, speak, and touch the people that I'm impacting, and then hopefully build a relationship, because I like the human element.
Oh, for sure. Man, there's nothing more rewarding. My God, you tear up just thinking about it. How did you find these people when you were in Lebanon? How did you identify these people that needed help so desperately?
Yeah, the travel, Rod. When I talked about travel, I don't travel as a tourist. I travel with like the key KPIs of, hey, do I know the taxi driver? Is someone going to pick me up at the airport the next time I come back? Do I know the owner of that store? Like, I'm always trying to meet people. So just over time, I started to meet local community leaders, a priest, people who work in the government, one way or the other, because I know where it's going to lead to. It's going to lead to, how can I impact some kind of local community somewhere in a region that gave back to me so much. I was serving over there when I was in the military. So it's just a matter of finding the right people who are connected to the community.
I love it, man. Absolutely love it. And thank you for your service. Obviously, I've neglected to say that already. And it's an area that I feel very strongly about as well. And veteran suicide, for example, veterans homelessness is just a travesty to me. And I spend time on that, and very, very proud of the time I spend and the investment I spend on that. But so let me ask you this. Let's pivot over to multifamily, because that's really what this show is about. And in your role What would you say is the most challenging piece of what you do? Well, first of all, what do you enjoy the most? I'm guessing it's people, but I shouldn't have pre-framed it with that. But people, but what's the most challenging?
I don't.
Oh, I'm so glad you're struggling with that. And guys, that's a clue.
I love it.
That's a clue. Okay, what he just did, and you guys couldn't see his face, and I saw it. Is he was having a hard time finding something to be challenged with because you don't focus there. You don't live there. Okay. And that's why it was so hard for you to find something. I'm sorry I interrupted you yet again, but that was really interesting for me to see. It
was genuine, Rob, because if you love what you do, it's not a challenge. It's just like it's the process per se. I would say the challenge that I have internal to myself is how do I articulate to people, or how do I help them find their own journey, or help them on their own journey to those freedoms that we talked about, right? That's my passion. I found my own sense of financial freedom and time freedom, geographic freedom with the traveling. Mm-hmm. I have purpose, giving back to people. I didn't become a street cop just because. Mm-hmm. And then you really need freedom to build relationships with people like Rod Khalif, because we need people to grow. And I try my best to articulate, especially to people who are coming out of corporate like me, there's a different way to do things than the normal path that school and society has set for you, that you must climb the corporate ladder and be the CEO. People are in desperation, sitting in roles they don't want to be in. So that's the point of me asking to come on, being part of your platform. Mm-hmm. There's other ways of doing things. It's not about real estate, and it's not about the money. It's about generating options for your life. I would say that's a bit of a challenge, just the articulation of how this type of thing can help people with their life.
Well, I think in your case, it's leading by example for sure. I mean, you're showing that it's possible, and you did it right too. I mean, I owned a couple thousand single family houses, and if I'd have really had my game on instead of accumulation, I would have been paying them off like you did. You were very diligent, and there's nothing stronger than free and clear real estate. And so, great job on that. Let me ask you this. I have a lot of listeners, and I love to ask this question. I do usually on every podcast. I have a lot of listeners that know they need to do something. Maybe they have that corporate job. Maybe they don't. Maybe whatever, just a normal blue collar sort of a thing, a contracting thing, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. But they haven't taken action to build their dreams. They haven't taken that first step. They're out of fear, out of limiting beliefs, out of comfort. Maybe they're comfortable. What would you say to that person to hopefully inspire them to actually take action?
If they have fear, it's just because there is a lack of knowledge about something.
Yeah.
You just have to go get the knowledge the way that I went to the library back in the day, the way that I listened to your podcast, for example, to learn stuff. Yeah. Another, and you know how you can accelerate it? Yeah, you can listen to podcasts or what have you. Get a mentor, or get a friend who's been there, done that. Find someone who has executed on what it is that you want to execute on. Ask them for advice, add value to them, and just learn. Now, if you can't afford, there are paid mentors. I had a paid mentor. I needed help getting over limiting belief. It wasn't technical real estate stuff. It was every time I tried to do a multifamily or mobile home park deal and I ran into a challenge, my mind would go right back to doing single family because it was easy.
Right.
And he finally got on a plane from Rhode Island, flew down to DC, spent 2 days with me and said, "Stop, man. Why can't it be you? Why do you consistently think that other people are special?" And it helped. So a mentor can certainly break barrier, but if you can't go that route, then podcasts, Google, YouTube, books, seminars. There's just so many ways to do it. So fill that fear, that hole that you think is fear, with knowledge, and that'll bridge the gap for you.
No question. And guys, crazy for me not to mention the fact that I've got a virtual boot camp coming up March 12th and 13th. Right now, the price is $97. It includes the recordings. It includes my Courage and Confidence course, which is 8 modules. It includes my Finding Deals course, which is the hardest thing right now, is finding deals. It just has all these bonuses. and it's like a duh. Okay. It's less than a decent dinner to come spend 2 days with me. And I don't sell anything there either. So if you're interested in that, oh gosh, I'm going to have to probably put the link in the show notes, because that was actually what I just described as a special that I have right now. I tell you what, if you ping me on social media, I will get you the link to that special where you get those 2 courses as well as the tickets and the recordings. I mean, it's a screaming deal. So just ping me on any social channel and my team will make sure you get that link. But anyway, and you've heard me say it on the show time and time again, competence is the first thing. You've got to learn, like Maurice just said, and then you'll have the confidence. And then once you have that confidence, you have the ability to influence people and raise money and so on and so forth. Let me ask you this. You're 47, yes?
46.
46. Okay. I love to ask the question, and I get a lot of different answers, but there's usually a similar theme.
Yeah.
And that is, if you could go back and tell 18-year-old Maurice, or let's say 25-year-old, at 18, you don't know your head from a hole in the ground, but at 25, you're starting to get your act together. If you could go back and tell your 25-year-old self with what you know now about real estate, any real estate, is there anything you'd say or do differently, or, drill down on, and answer it any way you like? And you know what? And if it's not just real estate, it can be life in general as well. So please don't limit yourself just to real estate.
Yeah, my 46-year-old self would tell my 23-year-old self, good job.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by it. That's not me, patting myself on the back. What it actually is I had this notion that titles meant nothing. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to necessarily be a general in the military because people told me. I think I wanted to lead and do good, but if I got a title out of consequence of doing good, I was happy with it. Same thing with corporate life. My last promotion was in 2013 and I retired in 2021. So 9 years, okay? Not 8 or 9 years. I never made partner at my firm. I was asked to enter the partner track 4 times and I declined it every time. The reason why is because I needed that time freedom to go build whatever I wanted, build my life outside, because that's what's going to stay with me forever. So even though I did the real estate stuff kind of slow, the systematic paying off of these individual things, I think I had it right. If I had to give myself one thing, it would just be partner with people faster. And there are people out there in the world that think like you. I thought I was different. I wasn't different. I was just looking for a lifestyle, and I was around 20s and early 30s somethings that were more concerned with cars and girls and boys and titles and money. So I just stayed to myself. I gave up my 20s and early 30s. I was miserable. That's the thing. Yeah, that's it, Rod. I was miserable. I was depressed. I had entrepreneurial depression. And the way you can get rid of entrepreneurial depression is to put yourself around people who are like-minded and trying to do things like you. And I didn't seek people out early enough, and I paid the price for it. But I am very happy with how the journey ended up.
Wow. I would almost say the exact same thing personally. I'm really impressed with what you just said, because, I don't know if you know my story. I lost $50 million in 2008, but if I hadn't, I wouldn't have the incredible joy of what I'm experiencing now in my life with my wife, my students, and everything else. And so it was all part of that journey. But the same thing, back when I was starting, if I'd have gotten some mentors, I just didn't even think to do that.
Yeah,
I would have also not had that entrepreneurial depression, because I felt like I had something to prove. It's such a great answer, buddy. I appreciate that. And the other thing that you said that I want to drill down on for a second is you've talked about it a couple of times, where you didn't need to be in the quote unquote titled leadership position. And I'm going to tell you guys, there's something called servant leadership, where you're pushing instead of pulling. And I got to tell you, I did this. I haven't talked about this ever, I don't think. I did this corporate retreat in Fiji at Tony Robbins' event, Tony Robbins Island. And it was called Life and Enterprise Management. God, I can't believe I remember that. This is like 20 some years ago. And it was all CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And what they did was they teamed us together and we had competition. And I mean, it was freaking kill or be killed. In fact, we did a volleyball tournament and my pinky finger got bent all the way back. It was bent the wrong way because I was in there but what was fascinating was I saw different kinds of leadership. You saw it in the military. I was never in the military, but you said, I'm sure you saw it in the military, and you could see the leaders that were quiet in the background, influencing and pushing, rather than the ones that had to be out front pulling and manic and all of that. And it was fascinating. So, I don't know why I went down that rabbit hole, but it was an incredible experience. And I wanted to, kind of hammer that home a little bit. But you were starting to say something. Were you going to add to what I was saying?
My point in kind of giving that servant leadership piece, I guess, is people are just following the track. They always think they've got to have the next title. Success is relative to what your life goals are.
Yeah.
So I know people who make $6,000, $7,000 passive income and have $4,000 of bills. They're free.
Yeah.
Right. But I also know a guy who's a CEO of a startup. He makes about $30 million a year, but he has he overextended himself from a liability perspective. And then he's just way too busy. He's never with his family. He's not free. You follow whatever it is, your own path. You can lead from behind. You can lead from the front. You can be quiet, but just know your goals and then know your place on how you want to get there.
Yeah. That's one of the first things we do at my boot camps is goals. Because how do you get anything if you don't know what it is? And the more often you do it, the more clarity you get. And you need to have that clarity. And you need to be real clear on the why. Because again, like your examples there, that guy maybe makes $30,000 a month or whatever he's making, but he's unhappy and he's going to be unfulfilled because he's not with his family. And I have that memo as well back in the day. Of spending so much time trying to prove the world I was good enough. I was distracted and I wasn't focused when I was with my kids. My greatest regret in life to this day. I mean, they say I was a great dad, but I didn't live up to my own expectations, and I push that a lot as well. Success can be defined a lot of different ways. So how do you define success? I'd love to hear your definition, because I think we've alluded to it. We've danced around it, but
okay. So my definition of success, which is freedom, is doing what I want, when I want, where I want.
Yeah.
Period. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to work. I work my butt off. I really do. But when I was, as I told you, I became a police officer in 2008. At the same time, I was a corporate executive. I wanted it so bad that I worked the two jobs together, right? Now I'm retired from all that now. Where I spend a majority of my time is in this real estate space and investing space because I love it, and talking to people because I love it, and trying to give back through these platforms like yours, which helps a lot of people because I love it. Mm-hmm. So, but I am choosing what to do. I can, last week, where was I last week? Oh, I just came back from a Disney cruise with my kids. I was in Lebanon the week before. Before that, I was in south of France. Before that, I was in Mexico, but always being back home and working from everywhere. I am choosing where I want to be, choosing what I want to focus my time on. That is what success is, not a title and not a paycheck.
Very nice. Very nice. Do you have any, obviously you spend a lot of time looking in the mirror. Do you have any favorite quotes or any favorite, any things that help you self-motivate, help you stay focused or keep you motivated? Anything, you can take that anywhere you want.
Viktor Frankl's book.
The great book, of course. Man's Search for Meaning. He was in World War II in a concentration camp. You got it.
Rod, I was trying to figure out what all this stuff is that we do. And because I had gotten to a certain cash flow level, not millions, but you got 160 grand of cash flow coming in, you're okay, depending on where you live.
Sure.
And you start to realize that once you have a certain level of financial ability, life was never about that in the first place. And I was trying to figure out what my purpose is for being here. And I just couldn't do it. And I picked up, I think I was listening to Tim Ferriss one day, and he recommended that book, and I read it, and I understood what something called logotherapy is, where it helps you understand what your purposes are. So I have 3 purposes, okay? One, I don't think about them very often, but one is giving back to community, okay, being loved by a community, because if you're loved by a community, that means you've done something to help them.
Love it.
That's all that philanthropy stuff is. I know when I go back to that particular town in Lebanon or where I patrol in DC, where I used to patrol, there's going to be people that are going to come up and hug me. And because I was in service to that community. So being loved by a community, constant learning, okay? Constant learning for me comes in starting new businesses and traveling the world and being immersed in culture. I cannot do the rat race thing. It doesn't work for me at all. So that's the second. And then the third is being in love. That means with my family, with my significant other, with my kids. I need that feeling of I am meaningfully connected to certain people. So it's those three things that, I haven't even articulated them in a while, but it's those three things that are innately a part of me because I read that book that drive kind of everything that I do.
You got those three things from the book?
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
no, not from the book. As I was reading the book, I was thinking about what they were saying in the book, and I developed my own, what is my purpose? And it popped up to those three things.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. By the way, guys, if you have not read that book, highly recommend it. It's about a guy that was in a concentration camp and saw the most horrific things you can possibly imagine, and really, decided to place a different meaning on what he witnessed. And Tony Robbins talks about this a lot as well, where it's not what happens to you, it's the meaning you place on it.
Yes.
Like me losing $50 million. I decided to put a meaning that I would have never met my wife. And I would frankly, truly, realistically give it all up again if I was to lose her over it. So, yeah. Well, listen, brother, it has been a real treat to have you on. We didn't get into any technical stuff at all, just because I could tell it was going to be much more fascinating to hear your story and talk about meaning and talk about motivation and talk about, why you do what you do. But really appreciate you coming on and adding value and wisdom. And we'll probably have to circle back at some point and do it again.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you, bro. And for allowing me on your platform and giving back to people. It's what I love to do. And I'm grateful that you would allow me to jump in.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our Warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com